Now when it comes to making videos for you guys on YouTube and on Patreon, I'm not one for this video will solve all of your jazz guitar problems, shortcuts and hacks. But in today's lesson I want to share with you something really simple that I think could be described as a hack, something that I find very helpful. One thing that I think most of us agree on is that we're pushed for time with practice. And when it comes to practicing arpeggios, even just a 1-3-5 or 1-3-5-7, that's C and C major 7 there, there's so many different ways you can practice that. With chromaticism, with additional notes, with rhythm, the permutations for just finding a knot on the fretboard is massive. And that's before you've even sort of thought about extended arpeggios. And that's what I want to share with you today. So extended arpeggios, it's often, talked about referencing Charlie Parker when people talk about extended arpeggios. So that's using and targeting the 9th, the 11th and the 13th. So notes beyond our root, 3rd, 5th and 7th, typical arpeggios. And it's often said that they're the hip notes. They're the notes, in the 40s when jazz became much more interesting to some people. But if you took literally a big extended arpeggio, you could have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, like that. That's going to be really hard to kind of get our head around on the fretboard. And there's a much simpler way you can think about targeting the 9th, the 11th and the 13th that really helped me. Now first, the theory behind this. First you've got to understand where the 9th, 11th and 13th come from. So if you took a C major scale, number those notes with the intervals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 for the octave. We've reached C again. Continuing into a second octave, then you get 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now in that upper section beyond 8, people really only talk about 9, 11, 13 in jazz. You may hear people talk about tenths, like for instance the song Blackbird uses a lot of tenths, not exclusively, but quite a few in that song. But 9, 11, 13. And what's interesting about these, if we think about the notes, right? And you'll see the red I've used here. 1, 3, 5, 7, C, E, G, B. And then 9, 11, 13 is D, F, A. Now I titled this video When Arpeggios Become Scales, because if you were to combine all those notes and put them in order, you'd just have a C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So you could say, well, those upper extensions are just found in the scale anyway, so you could just play a C major scale against a C chord and get those upper extensions depending on where you're playing on the fretboard. Yes, potentially, but I think there's a simpler thing to notice there, which is the fact DFA, that top 3 notes there from the upper octave, the 2nd octave, as a D minor triad. So we're in the key of C, imagine. Chord 2 is D minor 7. So one simple hack, if you're playing over a C major chord and you want to target those upper extensions, you could just play a D minor triad. So if you got this sound, what I did there is play D, D, F, A, and then resolve to a G, which is a note in a C major 7 chord. So what you can do is you can play the triad of the next chord in the key to get your upper extension. So if you've got chord 1, C major 7, the next chord in that key would be D minor, ignoring its 7th for now, and just have that triad, DFA. So that gives us those upper extensions, the 9th, D, F, the 11th, A, the 13th. And that would work very simply, and you could combine. Sorry. So here I'm combining C major 7 and D minor. That type of idea. And you'd get those upper extensions just by playing the triad built one scale step along. So let's say we were in the key of G major. The next chord in the key of G after G major 7, chord 2 would be A minor 7. So against the G major 7, you could play A minor, an A minor triad. And that would give us our and that would give us the upper extensions for that chord. So that 9, 11, 13 for your 1 chord is just the triad of the 2 chord. Now, what's cool about this is where you can get into the territory of triad pairs. So if you imagine, like, go back to C, just go in between getting into playing between D minor and C, and you get some movement as well. But also, you know, it might be easier for you to think about that 9, 11, 13 as just a triad built from the next scale tone above, rather than having to think of, say, it's much easier for me personally than thinking of this, some big arpeggio like that. Yeah, it's possible, but it's not something I've actually practiced a lot. Whereas the idea of just, you know, that sound over the top of this, the D minor triad, that's something which is much more accessible, much easier to use. So one thing I'd like, you know, suggest you try is you could take a 2-5-1 backing, C major 7, sorry, D minor 7, G7 to C major. And if you played the triad above in each case in that particular key, you would play E minor over D minor. Boom, boom, boom. Just listen to that. Boom, boom, boom. That gets some interesting notes. Dun, dun, dun. Gets the G7. The next chord in that key would be A minor, so play an A minor. Ba, ba, ba. And it gets the C major. Try D minor. Dun, dun, da, da. Obviously, it'd be easier for you to just, I think, first off, just get used to trying over just a C major and just trying to hit that D minor, listen to what it sounds like. Notice, obviously, it doesn't sound like a D minor anymore because it's not against a D minor, because the intervals are different. But in terms of the fretboard, it's still in those same places that you'd normally get your D minor triads at. So that's something I'd just like you to try and say, hope you find that helpful as a way of kind of breaking down some of the trickier theory with upper extensions. Anyway, I hope you find that useful. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. Don't forget jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday. And if you've not yet checked out my Patreon page, then there's a link in the description.